And welcome into the Pirate Radio podcast. Great to have Jon Gilbert alongside ECU Athletic Director. Jon, thanks for joining us today. Great to see you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Let's, before we get too down in the weeds with the ECU stuff, I want to take it back a little bit. Man, you're 30 years deep into college athletics and administration. Does it feel like you've been in it for 30 years already?
It really doesn't. And I think, for me, I kind of came up the hard way. I was a graduate assistant football coach. Then I took a, position, a full-time temporary position at Alabama where I made $12,500 a year plus benefits, and really kind of have progressed from there. So it really doesn't seem like that long because I've moved into different opportunities every couple years that has really kept me energized.
Kind of keeps it fresh.
It does.
In many ways. What made you get into administration of athletics? You probably have a sports background, but at what point did you say, man, this is something I could do as a living? Well,
I really thought I was going to coach, and that was really my career path. But I'd been married maybe 8 months, and my wife was actually offered an assistant swimming coaching position at Alabama. She was a swimmer there, and so she took the job. We moved to Tuscaloosa. I thought, I'll get a high school coaching job or something along those lines.
Basketball?
Football.
All right.
And then the position in the athletic department opened up where, it wasn't very much pay, but it was a foot in, and decided to take it and haven't looked back.
If you weren't in athletic administration, and you might have already answered this potentially by your last response, what would you be doing? Would it be coaching?
Well, I'm going to count coaching as being in athletics.
Okay, fair enough. What would you be doing if you weren't in athletics?
I'd probably be like a high school principal or something, or
You could, Jon, now that I look at you, you would make a great high school, like you kind of have the principal look a little bit.
Yeah, I probably would.
And good demeanor for that.
Yeah. I
think you've got, to be a high school principal, you have to be somewhat even keel. Yeah. You can't be, off the charts either way, because there's always an incident. Right. There's always a fire to put out, and that's kind of like athletics for you now. So yeah, I think you've got you could be a great Principal Gilbert.
Yeah. We would there would be no bells. We would change classes on music. So I'd go through rap, southern rock, country. We'd hit all the genres.
I like it. Already making good changes. All right, Jon Gilbert once again joining us, ECU Athletic Director on the Pirate Radio podcast. Jon, I'm losing track of time now. We mentioned you've been in the business for 30 years. East Carolina, what are we, a couple years deep now?
Yeah, a little over 2 years. Yeah. December 1 was 2 years.
It's gone by. In some ways, it feels like it's gone by. Like it seems like you just got here, and then I know what you're getting ready to say. In some ways, it probably feels like you've been here 20 years after last year.
Well, last year in particular, the COVID year, it felt like a dog year.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a normal year.
So if you count that as 7, and then your year before, you've been here 8 years, Jon.
Yeah. It's been tough on everybody. It's tough on our coaches. It's tough on our student athletes. It's tough on our staff. In so many ways, it's a year of survival until we can get back to normal.
When you look back at last year, first of all, has that been the toughest year you've ever faced, I guess, professionally in the business?
It was, or is. It's tough from a mental side. It's tough from the physical element of it, just all the way around. Just so many things that you were dealing with, unexpected, that you're not really trained for.
Yeah.
If I had to go back again and know that I was going to work in college athletics for as long as I'm working in, I think my undergraduate degree would probably be in like psychology, and then I would get a law degree.
Yeah.
With probably an MBA minor.
That's a good skill set, because you're dealing with people, so the psychology degree would be good, and then you're dealing with a lot of contracts.
Yeah. Well, just the legal, like everything, you're dealing with legal. I talk to legal a lot. The contracts is really a small piece of it when you talk about, just day-to-day things.
Yeah.
It's important.
What lessons have you learned over the past 12 months? And because we're getting ready to hit the anniversary, and as we said, that last year has been a long year, and it's affected everybody different. We've talked about this off the air. Some people have, it's affected their business where they've had to close. Some people in business have had record years. It really just depends on your situation. But regardless of how it's affected you financially, it's affected you. And it's had a situation on people's health, mental being, financial status, all of those things. What are the lessons you've learned over the past 11, 12 months or so?
Well, I think the first lesson I've learned is how important it is to communicate. And, we went through a number of things in our department, furloughs, payroll reductions of budgets, really important that your staff hears it from you. So I think communication really is important. I think maintaining a positive attitude is really important. It'd be easy to have a negative attitude right now,
yeah.
or through this piece.
Yeah.
But I think maintaining a positive attitude, making sure that you're aligned with campus. Ron Mitchelson's been great throughout this process, and I feel like where athletics is very aligned with campus as far as our operations, what we're doing, keeping them informed. And then I think the other piece is conveying that, despite all these things, there's still expectations. You have to come to work and do a good job. You're still going to be held accountable. We still want to win. Those really are my lessons learned.
When you look going forward now, knock on wood, it looks like things are starting to get better. The COVID numbers, the bad numbers are going in the right direction as far as the amount of infections and hospitalizations. The amount of vaccines are going way up and going to continue. They just approved a third new one that you've seen with Johnson & Johnson, which is going to be widely available soon for folks. So it looks like the future is getting bright in a hurry. The governor's eased up on some of these restrictions, can now have fans at baseball games, which we couldn't have, before. So things are getting better, and hopefully they'll continue to get better. But what is the latest, when you look ahead 3, 6, 9 months into the crystal ball, what you've got, really just the rest of this year, it's hard to get too far more than that. What are the challenges that you face that you feel you'll have to overcome going forward?
Well, I think really for me, for the immediate future, there are really 3 things I'm kind of focusing on. One is stabilizing our budget. It's a year of survival, but where we can get revenue, we want to get revenue, so stabilizing our budget. 2, competitive excellence. We need to win, and winning's important. Doing it the right way, having fun, all those things, but winning's important. This weekend was a great example of that. Volleyball with a great win, softball, baseball won on the road, a series on the road against a really good team. Even our lacrosse team, they played a really good team, highly ranked team in Duke yesterday, but I can clearly see our teams getting better. So I think it's important to have the excellence on the field. And then the third piece would be our student athlete life. I want to make sure that we're engaging them, helping them through this process, and, providing all that we can provide for them to be successful.
And this kind of ties into some of what you were talking about a second ago there, John. But as far as goals for this program, and you always have big picture goals. Everybody wants to win championships and those standard things that, of course, are always goals. But what are realistic goals for this program going forward? What is, when you look into the rest of 2021, what is realistic goals for ECU athletics?
Well, I think the 3 things I just mentioned are realistic goals. I do think we can stabilize or, begin the process of stabilizing our budget. We can win, and winning's important. I think it's it's an important, I think really, Troy, if I had to sum it up, is we need to change the narrative. And the narrative has been, we're struggling financially, and we haven't done much as a matter of success, on the field or the court. And I think we've got to change that. And I think this weekend was a great indicator that we can. I look at our volleyball match yesterday, and I saw something this morning where some volleyball score predictor, we had like an 8% chance of winning, and we won in 3.
Yeah. And
you look at how, the team we beat, you look at how they're funded compared to how we're funded.
Yeah, which was UNC for folks that don't know.
Big difference.
Yeah.
But we still won.
Yeah.
Like our student athletes and our coaches, they found a way. And so I don't want us relying on all the things of we can't do it because of this. Like we really can. And so I think, the competitive excellence piece is important.
Not trying to make excuses for you, but as you know, you inherited a lot of problems as you came into this position. And the folks that were here before you, I think sometimes did a good job of not being as transparent as you guys have been, or communicating as much as you guys have been about the issues. Sometimes there was a nothing to see here attitude, but the numbers are the numbers, and eventually the numbers don't lie. And when I talk about the numbers, I'm talking about financially, and there's still a hole to dig out of. What is the realistic, and you guys have tried to do a lot. You've cut to the bone, it seems like. I'll get more on that in a little bit, but what is the realistic number as you finished up a terrible year in 2020 for everybody, which we had problems beforehand, but the pandemic only, put a gaslight to it. What is the hole ECU's trying to dig out of right now?
Well, it's significant in that all of our revenue pieces have been stripped away from us. Little to no ticket sales in football, no ticket sales in basketball. We're going to have very limited attendance in baseball. And then you get a trickle down of concessions, sponsorship dollars, licensing dollars. I mean, it just multiplies itself. So I think our total number, we're going to be in or around $20 million in lost revenue. Now, since the middle of March, we've also
Now, is that just for 1 year, or is that the cumulative number?
1 year.
Okay.
1 year. So we've saved probably or cut $9 million worth of expenses since the middle of March. And so we've been fiscally responsible, in how we've managed this. But at some point, we've got to be able to generate revenue and kind of get back to normal.
Talking to Jon Gilbert, he is ECU Athletic Director, and going into year 3 now, leading the Pirates athletically. And Jon, we talked about how you guys are trying to save money. I think you've looked at every line item and tried to cut where you can cut, but there's certain things you can't eliminate. And I remember last year, you guys, nobody wants to see sports eliminated, but I remember when that happened, and under you and Ron Mitchelson's leadership saying, hey, look, we can't fund all these non-revenue sports. We're going to have to cut these 4. And I thought it made a lot of sense. And once again, nobody's a cheerleader going, yeah, awesome. Let's get rid of all these people's jobs and scholarships. But I understood running a business. I get it. You have to make tough decisions. As I said, I get it. I think most people, unless it was directly affecting you, most people understood the decision that was made. My question is, why the decision to add them back? I know there was an attorney out of California that was threatening a lawsuit to the university, but the university has a team of attorneys that they keep on staff all the time. Why not let that go to a lawsuit and state your case, and this is why we can't do it, and this is why we feel we're still compliant in Title IX, and go ahead and not cave into their pressure, so to speak?
Well, I think when you look at the totality of it all, the best direction, was to reinstate the 2 women's sports. If you look at what went on nationally, so nationally, you had 5-6 schools that did a similar thing to ECU. Some of them went to court, and all of them had the same outcome, like everyone, of reinstating the sport. And so as we looked at that and talked to, Title IX attorneys, et cetera. We felt like that was the best direction for us, is to reinstate the two. We hired Matt Jabs and Kirsten Burgess, both former Pirates, back to their positions. They've been extremely professional in how they've handled themselves. It was a difficult situation. It wasn't personal. We're going to welcome them back, and we have welcomed them back, and we're going to do everything we can to support those two programs.
And obviously the supporters of those programs are ecstatic, and they're glad to have them back. But it's just a situation of college athletics. I think ECU situation is not that different from even some big schools that are losing millions and millions of dollars a year.
Well, when you look at the model or the foundation that college athletics is built upon, it is broken. It is not long-term sustainable. We have one, maybe two sports that bring in revenue to cover themselves. The rest of them do not. And so you have to find ways to fund all of these things to be competitive. And it's difficult when the lack of revenue comes in. I mean, you can only cut so many things.
I agree with you. I think the model is broken. I agree 100%. I guess the big question is, how do you fix it?
Yeah, it's a great question. This is just my own personal opinion, no one else's. I do think when you look at conference membership, and let's look at where the dollars come from being in a conference. They come from essentially TV money, your TV contract. And the TV networks will tell you they're paying 80% for football, 20% for men's basketball. That's really what they're funding. Mm-hmm. So would it make sense for us to be in the American, which I think is a great conference for us of where we are? Could we be in the American Athletic in football, men's and women's basketball, but maybe be in a more regional conference for everything else? Now, the reality is probably a lot of the big conferences want nothing to do with that, which makes it difficult from a scheduling standpoint. But things like that make a lot of sense to me on what the future could look like.
I tend to agree with you. And I think it reminds me back in the 90s when ECU was independent in football. They weren't in a conference, but they basically made their own conference. You could do that back in those days. Nowadays, it's impossible to really survive as an independent. And then they were in the Colonial for the other sports, which was a great conference at the time, I thought, because all those games, especially basketball, baseball, well, they were all, you get in a car, and no game was further than like 2 or 3 hours away at the most.
Right.
Maybe American was in it at the time up in D.C. was a little bit, but you could still bus there. No one had to get on a plane to go do those games. So I do see what you're saying. If you don't have to charter and you don't have to buy airfare, which is only getting more and more expensive, it would be a huge savings.
It would. It really would.
Just curious, what is the most asked question you get?
Lately, the most asked question is, why can't I get into the baseball game?
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I hate it for our fan base, because if you look at what we do, we really do say, hey, we want as many people to come that can come. And during this pandemic and during this piece, we're having to tell people, we're sorry, you can't come. And that goes against everything that we've ever done in college athletics, in the history of college athletics.
Yeah.
So it really is another hit from the pandemic. And the only way for us to fairly allocate is to say, we've got to base it off of priority.
Yeah.
And so a couple of things that we're doing as it relates to baseball. One, we spent some time in the jungle yesterday setting up chairs and kind of measuring everything. I do think we're going to get some additional seats in, that maybe some individuals that were on the cut line, that we might be giving them another correspondence that says, hey, we're creating some additional inventory. We think you're going to make it. The downside is, based on social distancing, people may not be sitting in their exact seats.
Right.
And so that's really tough because if
and you told me last week, even like the jungle seats, you're going to have to be in a seat in the jungle.
You are going to have to be in a seat. Now, you can stand up. We're not saying you can't stand up in the jungle.
But you're going to be like assigned an area, basically.
You're going to be assigned an area, and that's all based on this ordinance. This is not a Jon Gilbert or an East Carolina mandate. We're following, state and local guidelines, and I hope people will understand that.
Well, and your hands are tied, and I've tried to explain that to people too. Look, you'd love to have as many people. You'd want to have 6,000 people a game if you could,
doubt.
And hopefully by the end of the season we can get back there. But right now the numbers, you guys are allowing 1,200 in. From what you had told me, I believe on Friday.
Yes.
But and this is I was talking with Ellerby about this earlier. I think for people to understand why it's so tight, if you hold back 400 of those tickets, let's say for players, parents, personnel, and maybe some students, that leaves 800 tickets left for the Pirate Club. Well, by the time, if you just go to the top 200 donors, the Pirate Club, they each order 4 tickets. Those 800 are gone with just 200 people.
They are.
So I think when you explain it that way to folks, it does, like, even though, hey, look, it's great that they're top, we have someone that's, ranked 700 at the Pirate Club, which is great, but it doesn't take much for those 1,200, which is down to 800, to get gobbled up, right?
It does not, and so again, goes against everything that we believe in athletics from an attendance standpoint, but we're going to manage it the best we can.
I want to circle back on the conference talk. You mentioned earlier about, big picture things, so what could be done in the future. But what about expansion of the American Conference? There's a lot of talk about Boise State potentially coming in football only. That's been in a lot of media reports lately. Mike Oresco is very quiet about it, which means, if it wasn't possible, he would just go ahead and shoot it down, but he's not saying anything. What do you think about expanding with a team like Boise State for football only?
Well, the commissioner's keeping quiet, so my remarks will be measured. But I would say this in general. When you look at where we are as a league, we've got a great league as a football. I mean, our football league is really tough, really good schools. But we really are aspiring to win the next round of discussions with the playoffs. If the playoffs expanded, we certainly want a seat at the table given the strength of our conference. And I do think that our conference has separated itself from the other group of 5 type schools. And so the more that we can strengthen our conference to have a better seat at the table, I'm all for that.
You mentioned baseball getting fans back in the stands, which will start this week. Basketball starting. We're just glad to have basketball starting back, right?
Yeah, we are now.
Is that, knock on wood, is that still happening?
No. It's we're gonna.
I don't want to jinx anything.
No, we'll play Central Florida Thursday at 9. I think it's an ESPNU telecast. The reason for the late tip.
And I've got to look into this. If this is the latest tip-off time for ECU basketball, there might have been one other 9 o'clock start.
I'm sure there's probably.
That's a Tom McClellan question, right there.
I am definitely going to have to try to catch a quick 20-minute nap.
I was going to say that's a late night right there.
I'm normally in bed by 10.
I know. I was going to say 9:30 for a guy like you. But yeah.
Usually 9:30 to 10.
That last 30 minutes is wind down time.
Yes.
Yeah, you're going to have to get a nap. But
so we're really.
But how many fans are going to be able to come in for basketball?
I think we're going to have somewhere around 900 to 1,000 for that game.
And are those as tight as baseball, or not quite yet?
Not quite. We're not actually going to sell tickets to it just because of the quick turnaround.
Yeah.
What we are going to do is target our students. They're just getting going at 9 o'clock at night.
True.
And so I'm hopeful that we'll get a big student turnout for that game.
At least to have some atmosphere in there. 900 students could make a lot of noise.
They can make a lot of noise, and then donors, we'll go by priority that want to go to the game. They'll be able to go.
The big news is also football season tickets launching, so people can actually order those now. And I know you're excited, and I think by the fall, hopefully things are almost fully operational. I really think they could be and probably should be. So you guys are expecting hopefully a big opportunity to try and recapture some of this lost revenue, I know, with football.
Yeah, we are selling tickets as normal. I love our schedule. We've got a really good home schedule. Obviously, our first home game will be South Carolina, SEC school coming to Greenville. Those games don't happen often. They're really hard to get. They are coming. And I want to see a full Dowdy-Ficklin. I've been here 2 years. Obviously, take away the pandemic year, I think the biggest crowd we had my first year was right around 40,000 for William and Mary. I really would like to see what a full house looks like in Dowdy-Ficklin.
I'd like to see it again, too.
Well, it's good for everybody. While, so. We should have a great student turnout for that game.
And honestly, football is the moneymaker at East Carolina. I mean, if football can't be successful financially, we're in big trouble.
It all starts with football. So everything else is important, but financially it starts there.
What are the pending needs for football? And they've had it, like everybody had to do more with less, but and the facilities have greatly enhanced over the years. I mean, East Carolina's come light years from where it used to be. But what are the future projects you've got an eye on, like wish list?
One thing that I'm working on is a second weight room. We really do need an additional weight room space. We're working on that now.
For athletics?
For athletics.
That wasn't part of Grady White's gift going to help fund that?
Yes. We'll target some of that money to help fund a second weight room. We still have some approval processes to go through, but working towards that.
But that would help where multiple teams can work out at the same time, where everybody's not fighting for the same equipment at the same time.
That's correct. Most places, every place that I've been, they've had multiple weight rooms.
Yeah.
We've had one, and the one we have is extremely nice. I'd like to have kind of an auxiliary weight room where we have additional space where more student athletes can get in.
Yeah, and if football's working in the Murphy Center, then the baseball team could work out at the other one or some other team.
And I think, the other piece, obviously, I'd like an indoor football building. I think there's some models out there that could be reasonable that we could fundraise for. I think it's an important piece to help move our program forward. Obviously, that's high on my list as well.
And if you had an indoor football facility, as you know, could be utilized for other sports when football's not in there. So it'd be a multi-purpose building in many ways. Where would you put it, John, if you could pick right now?
No location set in stone at this point. But I do think, back to your comment, everywhere I've been that's had an indoor building, everyone's used it. So it's not just relegated to one sport. Baseball, softball, soccer, lacrosse, track, everybody that is outdoors, they have an opportunity to get work in and practice time and individual time in when weather or nightfall or, whatever you want to call it, the weather condition, it does provide enhanced opportunity for them.
Jon Gilbert once again joined us on the Pirate Radio podcast. Thanks for tuning in wherever you might be. And John, it's now over 1 year since you've had an official director of the Pirate Club. Ryan Robinson's assumed that role with his other responsibilities. What is the timeline? And I guess even before we talk about the Pirate Club director position, what do you see the future of fundraising? Because I know there was changes you guys want to make with the structure of the Pirate Club. You've had a lot of folks retired. There's been a lot of changes over there in personnel. You've kind of got an opportunity to kind of start from scratch in many ways. How do you see the future of fundraising and specifically the future of the Pirate Club?
Well, I certainly think we need to evolve in our fundraising efforts, and I do think we're headed in that direction. Obviously, we've had some turnover in the Pirate Club. Ryan's done a really good job of leading the office while still doing his other duties, and really I'm looking at someone to manage both the revenue side from a fundraising standpoint, but also have their hands in the other pieces of revenue. So I think, certainly someone like Ryan, he can handle both. We also need to support the Pirate Club from some staffing positions. Mark Hessert's been working with the Pirate Club, I think, for 30 plus years. He's retiring soon. It's going to be an important role to fill just because of the institutional knowledge that someone like Mark has had. Mm-hmm. He's done a very good job with that position, but getting some positions filled is really important. Like when the pandemic hit, I think at one time we had 15 plus positions that were not filled. And it's not that we didn't need those positions, but we decided to not fill them based on the funding and, could we get by without it? For the longest time, we've had one person in the ticket office. We're just now starting to fill those positions back because we're going to play multiple events. I mean, we
need to sell tickets again.
We need bodies, and so you'll see us ramping up our efforts in that regard.
Got a new chancellor coming in officially this month. He'll be starting the job in mere days officially, probably already actively working now. We'll be talking with him soon on a future Pirate Radio podcast in just a couple weeks. But by the org chart, I believe that's your new boss coming in. So what is your relationship with him? And the good news is he seems to be very pro athletics.
Yeah, I think, certainly excited about Chancellor Rogers, starting, I think, March 15th is his first date. I've met with him multiple times and have talked to him on the phone here or there. Looking forward to having him here. Can't say enough about what Ron Mitchelson's done in his tenure. He has been extremely supportive of me personally and our athletic department. And just, when you're in a leadership role, you have to make difficult decisions. And there's a segment of the population that, doesn't like maybe the decisions you make. And I think Ron has been a really good leader in a very difficult time for this institution.
I would like to second your opinion on that. And I think Ron has done a great job of trying to steady the ship under very tumultuous, very rough waters, I should say. Yes. A little bit easy for me to say, right? But Ron's done a great job, not just the past couple years as interim chancellor, but really since he's been here at East Carolina, formerly as provost, and just a great asset to this university.
He really has, and I think Chancellor Rogers coming in, obviously having worked here before, has great institutional knowledge, but it'll be different. It's not the same. He's, coming into a new role, and so I'm looking forward to working with him, and yes, he is my new boss, so I'll be reporting directly to him.
John, before we let you get out of here, we got a lot of folks listening across the Pirate Nation. What would your message to them be?
Well, my message is we want to re-engage with you. This last year has been extremely difficult. Pirate fans, more than most, they want face-to-face interaction, face-to-face engagement. They want to put their hands on you, so to speak. And so I'm looking forward to that re-engagement. It's going to start this spring with all of our spring sports and the opportunity for our fan base to engage. And then obviously we need everyone to support this football program. If people care about East Carolina, if they care about our athletic department and Pirate Nation, we need them to buy season tickets, be a part of the return of Pirate Nation.
And honestly, you probably need them now more than ever before.
Now more than ever before, because of where we are and what an important year this is for us. But we are changing the narrative. We can win here. We're going to be successful, and I'm excited about the direction of our department.
I definitely like that attitude, and I like that things are getting better, and I think people can start to sense it, and not just with East Carolina, but also just with the overall atmosphere with the pandemic. And just today's a great example. We've had you on the air many times over the past year, but a lot of it's been at a distance over on a phone line. So this is a great
finally be here in person.
Yeah, it's great to see you face to face. But I think things continue to improve for our nation, and hopefully also East Carolina University and ECU athletics specifically, which you're responsible for. So keep up the good work. And I know it's never easy, but that's why you get a paycheck, right?
That's it. I love my job. I love being here at ECU, and Katie and I really like the Greenville community. So we're going to keep pushing the ball forward.
John, any final thoughts before we let you go?
I think just back to the whole engagement piece, come be a part of it, come engage with us. It's going to be a fun year.
Thanks so much for joining us. Great to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.